Kia ora Poetry Live, my name is Chris Teese and I'm really excited to be able to join you for this poetry reading all the way from Wellington. Thank you so much to Jamie for inviting me to read tonight alongside Eric Kennedy, who I'm a very big fan of. I'm going to read a mix of old and new poems for you, as well as a few poems by other poets that I really like at the moment. And I'm going to kick off with a few poems from my second collection, HE'S So MASC. This is a poem called Heavy Lifting. Once I climbed a tree too tall for climbing and threw my voice out into the world. I screamed, I hollered, I snapped innocent branches. I took the view as a vivid but painful truth gifted to me, but did not think to lay down my own sight in recompense. All I wanted was someone to say they could hear me, but the tree said that in order to be heard, I must first let silence do the heavy lifting and clear my mind of any questions and anxieties, such as contemplating whether I am the favourite son. If I am not, I am open to being a favourite uncle or an ex-lover whose hands still cover the former half's eyes. I'll probably never have children of my own to disappoint, so I'll settle for being famous instead, with my mouth forced open on TV, like a Venus flytrap, lip-syncing for its life. The first and last of everything are always connected by the dotted line of choice. If there is such an order to things, then surely I should resist it. This next poem is called Like a Queen. I should be king. I should be torn from your stuffy pages. I should be monster. I should be undeterred by scars on shoulder blades. I should be tempted. I should be blackened, cum-stained and bleeding from love. I should be everything. I should be 20-something with no heel. I should be wanton. I should be leaning over ledges with my fortune. I should be happy. I should be a bottle that never empties. I should be cruel. I should be crime scene bathed in unforgiving flash. I should be looking. I should be Maria on a hilltop desperate for reception. I should be mirrored. I should be blanketed in folds of rolling silk. I should be child. I should be tender at their protests. I should be ready. I should be volume up on open roads. I should be paper. I should be leading you all into war. I should be visible. I should be on every street corner, as is. I should be bold. I should be the reason you know my name. I should be spill. I should be more than enough. I should be queen. I should be your closing credits. This next poem is called Performance Part 2. Chris Teese as deleted scene. The test audience said I didn't have the right look to play a New Zealander, even though I sound like a native speaker. So I got cut out and tucked away in DVD bonus feature hell. I can sound like a dead bell in a hurricane too, or a confronting newspaper cartoon, or talkback radio hold music, or an episode of Girls That Fails the Big Tell test, or hate crimes covered up as death by misadventure. Chris Teese as Asian Hitman #1, non-speaking part. Question from the audience #1. When I was a young girl growing up in 1960s Petone, there were Chinese kids at my school. Good grief did their lunches smell. And when they talk, it's all yabba, yabba, yabba. I only ever made fun of them behind their backs, and I walked to school with one whose family lived on my street, so I couldn't possibly be racist. Look, there's nothing wrong with the ones who have been here for generations. It's the new ones coming here, buying our houses and taking our jobs and not making the effort to understand our culture. I guess what I'm asking is, are you really a third generation Chinese New Zealander? Christise is Christise. No, I just play one on TV. Question from the audience number 2. My question is in 2 parts. Aren't you being racist yourself by calling me a racist? And what will you write about when you run out of otherness? Christise as Christise. If by otherness you really mean that rock in your fist, you really mean instructions for DIY walls, you really mean burning crosses, then lest we forget whoever invented the faggot, say a little prayer for politicians who play the yellow peril card, and raise your glass to the anonymous who haunt comments sections. You see, although my oceans deep know no light, and my sky is forever cinemascope, I have nowhere to hide. I know I have to trust my own body and voice like an understudy waits for that call to step up and feel those eyes on him and know that they're all thinking, you are good, you belong on that stage, but you are not the one we paid to see. You are not the one we were promised. My friends, I can be anything you don't want. And I'll read one more from this book. This is called I Want Things That Won't Make Me Happy. I want neon. I want that snap in my veins. I want Showtime lights sweeping me into deep, relentless fever. Give me calamity. Give me soul to get me through the final gate. I chose disco and look where it got me. Dancing with a smile I cannot sell. It's like every time I go out clubbing and flirting, I come home with another skeleton to bury. Sometimes I resort to using silence as means to cut him. An easy exit from a poorly lit party, but not before many, many kisses from many, many men. A better version of the latest model. To lick the curve of his bicep as it winks at me. For the world to retweet my pain. Earlier this year, I was asked to contribute some writing to this publication, which was produced for the Auckland Pride Festival. It was edited by Jeremy Hansen, and I contributed this poem that I had written about the protests in Hong Kong last year. And it's been really heartbreaking to see the protests that are still continuing in Hong Kong over the last couple of weeks, and what's been happening in the United States over the last weekend. So I thought I would read this poem for you. This is called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. What we wanted is now wishful thinking. Battleground or loose tooth. A defense mechanism or selective hearing. These days, you hear every single flag raised over the divided city. Tides in the wind, everything else ripped apart by sunlight. An overdue exposure. Their track record with being in the right is diminished in their haste to never be smaller than the sharpest insult or the loudest crowd. The streets roar and the city shakes back, revealing its pressure points like emergency glass, like paper lanterns, like a matchstick tower built on sand. The sirens, the makeshift shields against the authority to inflict. It's all raising a generation that thrives on revenge fantasies. Sound is your first sense before entering this world. It prepares you for the rhythm of chaos, a motherland's heartbeat. What is safety? It is never fearing silence or the sound and fury within us. The next poem I'm going to read is from Queen Mob's Tea House Tea Book, which Eric actually helped select poetry for, and he asked me to submit some work for it. This poem begins with a quote by the American poet Chen Chen. I wish the racism were not so predictable. And this poem is called Wish List Permadeath. I wish I didn't feel compelled to write about racism, but there it is, patrolling my everyday thoughts like a mall cop drunk with power. I wish people didn't ask me how to solve a problem like racism, as if it is a cloud they cannot pin down. I am not an expert spokesperson holding the unreachable truth. I wish I could predict when racism would exit stage right to wherever bad things go to die rusty, non-biodegradable deaths. But I can't predict the death of something with a robust business continuity plan that involves moving from host body to host body. I am not an exorcist. I am a sympathetic vomiter. Is it predictable for me to write this poem? I suppose so. What I really want to write about are things with promise, to offer up whiskers on kittens when the outlook is for Nazis upon Nazis. I wish I could sing my way out of this while the man I love applauds from the front row, our adorable beagle Rocket sitting at his feet. I wish I could start a love poem with a line like, "He thumbs me like the Oxford Dictionary and consider it a job well done." I wish I didn't always feel this way, always tired of explaining why I am tired, and writing this poem is more need than want. I never felt the need to be the gunshot during a knife fight until they told me there's no such thing as let's finish this once and for all. I realize now nothing is ever truly finished. I get knocked out, but I am a flashing corpse regenerating in a video game with limited credits. I guess there's always the pull of more to do, flags to fly, and words to scratch into the world's longest stretch of wet concrete. I guess what I'm saying is, I am not done with snakes and wolves. I am not done with feathers or glitter on the roof of my mouth. This is me begging for a fountain to take all my wishes. This is me speaking a storm into my everyday. I'm going to read a few poems by other poets now, and these are just poems that I've read recently that I really love. The first is by Jericho Brown from his book The Tradition, and this recently won the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. It's a wonderful book and really powerful. And this is a poem called I Know What I Love. It comes from the earth. It is green with deceit. Sometimes what I love shows up at 3 in the morning and rushes in to turn me upside down. Sometimes what I love just doesn't show up at all. It can hurt me if it means to, because that's what in love means. What I love understands itself as properly scarce. It knows I can't need what I don't go without. Some nights I hold my breath. I turn as in go bad. When I die, a man or a woman will clean up the mess a body makes. They'll talk about gas prices and the current drought as they prepare the blue-black cadaver that still, as the dead do, groans. I wanted what anyone with an ear wants, to be touched and touched by a presence that has no hands. The next poem I'm going to read is by a poet called Mary Jean Chan from her book Flesh, which is a really, really great book about race and queerness. And Mary Jean Chan is originally from Hong Kong, but currently lives in London. And this poem is called Notes Towards an Understanding. When you said, "Why didn't you warn me about cultural differences?" I did not know whether you meant my mother's face all darkened like a curtain, or the vegetables. When mother said, "The contours of her ears are calamitous," I momentarily reflected on my own auditory shells, whether they too played a part in my irrevocable queerness. When father said, "I find language to be a very difficult thing," I wondered if he was apologizing for his silences, how he said nothing when mother detonated my name. When I said, "I want to shout at all of you, but in which language?" my mind was tuned to two frequencies: mother's Cantonese rage, your soothing English, inviting me to choose. The next poem that I'd like to read for you is by Helen Rickerby, who won the Ockham New Zealand Book Award for Poetry a few weeks ago for How to Live, which is a really fantastic collection. But I'd like to read a poem from one of her earlier books called Cinema. And this poem is called Forgotten Dreams. At night, I turn off the lights and watch the pictures in my head. I find myself in the past or the future. Sometimes I find I am not even myself. We all dream in black and white, said my mother's psych lecturer circa 1959. I used to think the past was black and white, like an old movie, like our old TV, colour turned on mid-century. And maybe the past was 2D, the way my dad sees it with one damaged eye. But now, it's pushing out towards us. I have glasses over my glasses, and I'm in a cave underground 30,000 years ago. And it isn't black and white, and it isn't 2D. And Werner Herzog tells me that the 8 legs on this bison show movement. It's running, and the ibex is bucking its head. It's like early animation, he says. The archaeologist from the circus said that after 5 days in the cave, he had to leave. He had kept dreaming all night of light and lions, painted lions, real lions. I am a scientist, but I am also human. No, he says, I was not afraid, even though he was a unicyclist and not the lion tamer. He is sitting in an office, and I am sitting there with him, even though he is in France and I am in New Zealand. This is how I know I am already living in the future. And in the future, we'll be plugging in. We'll be walking around ourselves and other people, real life in real colour in 3D. So I thought I'd finish off this reading with a few new poems that I've been working on over the last year for what I hope is going to be my next book. And this poem called White Flag was inspired by the New Zealand artist Grant Lingard, and it's named after one of his pieces, which is also called White Flag. White Flag. I surrender my body to all histories, the visible and the vanished, piercing through the afterglow of erotic waste like holes in the tight shirts I used to wear to attract older men. Now they only attract moths, light drunk and in search of keratin. That was me before I knew how to recognize my own hand, punching every wall in my path, skin perforated and refusing to hold any shape, at least the ones I considered desirable. I craved the colour black to contain me. I shunned white because it reveals too much when you're considered dirty. A needle pulling thread doesn't always leave a stitch. Buried deep on a VHS tape in our TV cabinet was a hunk in red tartan boxer shorts seduced by one of his teachers. I coveted those shorts so as to know what it might feel like to be desired. It didn't work, nor did the jock straps, or the tank tops, or the faux snakeskin pants, all worn for show and to tell ultimately nothing. Fortune's fool learns to simmer in vain, correcting their course with one bloodied and bruised hand. I know this is my body. I know this is my refuge. I know sometimes I must play the traitor and take away its privacy to make amends with what I was afraid to deem plain and ornamental. And in keeping with the art theme, this poem was inspired by the conceptual artist Felix Gonzalez Torres, and this is called Portraits of Lovers and Friends. I believe the seasons of love will give us our direction, even as they decay one after the other and slip from our intentions. I have no name for it, but I know it like the gasp in my right knee after a run. I want to prove many small things simultaneously in order to establish a life, making sense of our methods of assemblage. Borders and corners first, or bursts of similar colours. I will take of a body to bind myself to what makes me so exposed. My family as a wall of mahjong tiles, my lovers as candy wrappers strewn through coat pockets, my friends finishing each other's jokes. We're each giants in our own lives. In this time of instant satisfaction, we must embrace the bitterness that presents itself daily, even when it becomes unbearably sweet to hold in our mouths for longer than a second, even when its cruelty turns red flame to glacial white numbness. This last poem that I'm going to read for you is called Poetry to Make Boys Cry. Give me your attention and I will give you an inferiority complex dripping in summer tears so wet I'm incapable of assisting during any emergency. All my limbs throwing themselves every which way to make a moment out of nothing. I think I've convinced myself that a fist is all I need to be a man, or a stride wide enough to cross over into enemy territory in one step. I reason everything, as if to say to my doubters, go tell the sea to change its colour. Time to amputate, I think, from my sentences. Time to make my mark without softening. From now on, I raise blood without hesitation. Give me a reason to gorge on the gamified gay experience, like an amnesiac at a family reunion being tricked into changing their will, or a dark room packed so tightly all our ideas of a masculine beauty standard have finally collapsed like a star in the unknown truth of space, where there is no pain behind a night that starts with tequila shots and ends with our beds thrown into the harbour. When I've nowhere to sleep, I tell myself that I'm still a man, still a thick knot at the end of a rejection that never ceases to sting. Mum said I'd be lonely if I came out, but loneliness relies on context to make it a poem worth writing. The fact is, I was already lonely. Midnight and folk music had already claimed me. No matter how lonely you might feel, you can still perform the Heimlich maneuver on yourself, with or without the aid of a stable edge. Which is to say, sadness is sexy if you know how to fuck around it. All you need is something blunt to run into. So, come on boys, make yourself at home in my newfound nerve and give me the affirmation only a firm hand wrapped around a throat can bring. The way your teeth shatter the light in this nightclub and tell me what you're really after. Bite hard, but please don't leave a mark. Don't leave evidence of the lengths I've gone to give myself away to someone else's needs. It doesn't hurt to have a stranger pin you against a wall, to fully appreciate the way that power and control can resuscitate your fantasies. I didn't just come here to watch daddies dance to Kylie Rae Jepsen, if you know what I mean. I came to set traps. I came to ruin lives. I want someone with an abrasive skin to play along, so I'll know what it's like to touch another man and have them stay with me. Do you know what I mean? Thank you so much for tuning in and watching this Poetry Live reading. Thank you again to Jamie for inviting me to be a part of it. I hope you are all safe and well wherever you are. Take care, and hopefully I'll get to see you in person in the very near future. Ka kite koutou.